You're live.
All right, so I've got just 1 minute before 5 here. We have everybody on that we're waiting for.
I believe so, yes, sir.
All right. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order then for meeting for the Lebanon Utility Service Board on March 3rd, 2021. Let the record show that all board members are present, and it is 5 p.m. And the first item we have tonight is the approval of the minutes from the February 17th, 2021 meeting. Everyone had a chance to review those minutes, and does anyone have any corrections or questions before we take motion to approve? All right, I'll take motions to approve the minutes.
I make a motion we approve the minutes for February the 17th.
Mr. Jim, I'll second it.
A motion by Bill, seconded by Jim to approve the minutes from the February 17th, 2021 meeting. Any other questions or discussion about the minutes? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Next item is an action item. It's the broadband feasibility study. And our general manager, Ed Baskell, is going to address the board on this item.
Yes, thank you.
Before we
Mr.
get started,
Chairman.
hey, Ed, this is Tim. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just want to let you guys know I can't get into the Zoom meeting, so this will be all voice for me.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you. Chairman and board. We had a working session last time where we went over in detail about the broadband feasibility study. There were some questions that came up after. I have a brief PowerPoint show that I uploaded to the board booklet. So on the broadband study, what I'm showing, I guess, for Tim and Jim who aren't seeing, is last board meeting, I had a PDF of a spreadsheet where we had the costs for telecom. What I did this time is I put totals at the bottom and highlighted, emphasize the revenue for telecom 2004 through 2020 was just over $8 million. The telecom's actual expenses were $3.7 million, and the allocated expense internally was 4.1. So telecom has started off, if you look at the actual historical trend, started off losing money, but it is very much in the green now and making money. And we're a nonprofit utility. We're just concerned about making sure we are wise stewards of the money. So the intent is to do this study to determine what's next, because no study has ever been done in telecom. Here's a brief description of the history. That the loans projected, not rejected, to be repaid by 2023. In addition to the loan, the telecom has contributed over $4 million to allocated costs. And this has saved our ratepayers approximately 5-6% in a rate increase. And that's important, because that $4 million, that means if that $4 million wasn't there, the rates would be higher. And now that that expense is being allocated, we want to make sure it keeps coming in, and we want to protect that money. I made a graph that is the red line I'm calling the loan balance. And you can see the loan balance was, there was a big loan that occurred in 2006, and then it decreases and it gets down to about $600,000. And the net profit, this is the allocated expense plus the margin. And you can see that's increasing. And about 2018, those lines cross. So we're at the point now where there's something happening with this utility where maybe it's saleable, maybe it's something, a business we get out of, because it is a competitive business, unlike our other businesses. It's time to look at doing something with it. So we've had the largest, moving forward, we have the largest yearly increase in customers in 2020. It's potentially from COVID. It's kind of a COVID dividend in that people are working from home. We do not really market the service. And honestly, we have trouble marketing the service being fixed wireless because you can have one house on the street that we can serve, another house that we can't right next to it, even closer to us because there might be a tree in the way of the signal. We'd like to explore the idea what to do with the business. We're experts on electricity, water, and wastewater, but we have 2 staff on telecom, and there's a lot to this business that is outside of our wheelhouse. Vantage Point was recommended to Lebanon Utilities. They're a broadband engineering and revenue consulting firm. We checked out some other options, and they were the best one. The first step is a competitive analysis, and it was important to the board last time that they have check-ins at various points where we might decide to just stop after that first step. And this slide is more or less taking out of the proposal. Total flat fee of $30,000. After the competitive analysis, if it comes out that that we shouldn't do anything, we could stop right there. The same thing with the other items. So I asked for the board's approval, but let me open it up for any questions.
So it's Neil. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm kind of getting from you here is that you're at a point where you want to see basically what the future is of telecom. Are we going to keep it the same and hope to maintain the level of business that we have after the loan is paid off? Are we going to attempt to grow this within ourselves, if possible, or are we going to get real aggressive and try to compete with fiber, or are we going to try to exit the business altogether and possibly sell the telecom portion if it would be profitable? And this study that you're presenting will give us a better idea of that. Is that close?
Yes, sir. I think that's right. How we got Vantage Point recommended to us is we met with a local vendor who we might partner with. They had a lot of knowledge, and what they told us was that unless you did a study to know what the value was, we couldn't know to partner with you, because if you have a project that you want to do, is it worth? You need to do a feasibility study on it to see if it's even feasible, and that's the same feasibility study you would need to know what's going forward for doing it yourself, partnering with someone, or just doing the same thing. So this is just about having information and about following a best practice like we do with the other utilities. With the water tank that Ryan's and BF&S are helping us put in, we did a study, and that fits into our capital plan. We definitely want to make sure we have storage so that and plan ahead, because you can't build a storage tank overnight. So we plan, and then we do a capital plan, and then we move forward. And this is just a step like that. We're just doing a study to determine what to do next. It's like water, wastewater, and electric.
Yeah, this is Bill. I think it's a good idea that we do this assessment and move forward and see what comes back, and that way we'll have an idea on which way we need to move.
I was just going to ask, if this is approved, does this $30,000 cost, or each step as we approach it, does this all come out of the telecom budget?
It is an unbudgeted expense right now. We didn't plan on this last year.
Would it hit
where exactly it come from?
Would it hit there? Okay, so we don't know yet, but it's possible that telecom would pay for the study.
Yeah, telecom would pay 100% for the study.
100%. All right, that answers that.
And the project kickoff, I assume that is what we had at the last session, where they just presented the study, and that was free of charge, right?
Yeah, we haven't paid them a dime yet. That was free of charge. I anticipate the project kickoff would be after we gave them the go-ahead, which I haven't done until I've got the board's backing.
All right.
Okay, that's all I have.
That's all I have.
This is Aaron.
Go ahead, Aaron.
When I reviewed the Vantage Point document proposal for the services they're going to deliver, that document reads very different than what has just been described as the scope of the study. That document is directly makes reference to expansion of fiber optic into the annexed areas within the city limits, and it also makes reference to a fixed wireless possibility. The overall study that was just mentioned about the worth of the utility and the possible direction that the utility could go is really very different than what's in the written document. So is what has been proposed for the $30,000 going to cover the additional information that wasn't in the written proposal?
Well, thank you for the question. The information I provided is history of the telecom utility. They're not really going to study the past. They're going to look to the future. And part of the estimate they're going to do is, can we better serve people by either purchasing or putting another tower up to do fixed wireless to better serve the community and provide rural broadband? Would it be cheaper to put in the fiber optic? If we have a new development going in, would it be cheaper to partner with someone who would run the fiber optic, but we at the same time are working with developers to put in infrastructure where maybe the fiber optic and the water and the sewer can all be done by the same contractor at the same time in the same hole. So there might be economies of scale where the net result is going to be cheaper service to the community. So that's part of the analysis. And it's also part of the valuation of the utility. It's our territory. So it could be that if we get a valuation that putting in fiber costs $1 million, it could be that could be a negotiating tool to speak with Metronet or Wintech and say, hey, we could help you put in this fiber optic for cheaper because they contract out all their work. You guys could run it and pay us a franchise fee. There's all sorts of business arrangements that could be done, but none of this can be done without having numbers that are certified by a professional engineer who can tell us what needs to be done. And I'm a professional engineer, but I'm not really qualified to work in the telecom area. It's a very specialized thing. And looking at the fixed wireless or putting in the fiber to the home is something that we need numbers for to determine the valuation of our territory. Because what you're looking at is not so much the utility, but the territory and the fact that we own it and it's our annexed area. Does that help answer your question, sir?
This is Tim. I think I can understand Aaron's concern because I think the document is presented as a little bit more definitive than as it goes through the document. I think with the process of $30,000 up front is where we need to get the strategy and what I read into this as a strategy, because as the newest member of this board, I found it interesting that a utility company is even in this business. And I think I understand some of the background as to why it's in the business, but whether it's a long-term feasibility or not, it is not a hardcore utility. And I want to understand that. And we can't do that without this study. If there's never been anything strategically done, what's happened is the utility has managed the business and managed it profitably, but that doesn't necessarily mean it aligns with what a utility should do. And I think this strategy is going to help us before we get cost estimates about running fiber or fixed lines or whatever it may be in the future. I think we need to understand what it means to eye-lines. And Aaron's question basically is, let's not get ahead of ourselves, and I agree with that, but I think it's desperately important to have strategy or get a strategy or get some background that we really aren't aware of at this point.
Okay, so to reflect back, if I hear what you're saying, the competitive analysis piece is very important, and we probably should get that piece done before we move forward with cost estimates, because it may well be that they come back and say, as an example, this area is well served by other utilities. The whole reason you started I-Lines was to provide for people that didn't have internet, but there's these two other providers. So maybe we need an exit strategy from the business. And how do we do that such that we don't lose revenue and support the other utilities best? And maybe it comes out of the competitive analysis is that we need to spend as little capital as possible and look at an exit strategy for the business. Maybe there's a way we can partner with someone. When I say partner, I don't mean partner to grow and become, a hyphenated name or something where we're always in the business, but partner in the sense that over a period of time, we exit the business.
Well, I think what I would say is that I don't know whether we should exit the business, stay right where we are, or expand as far and as fast as we can without strategically understanding the landscape. And that, I think, is the first step. And then all these other pieces may or may not be relevant as it relates to the South End 11.
I think this is Bill. I think that's why it's important for us to go ahead and do this first step of this proposal. That will give us an idea exactly what we have, what we can do with it, and where we can go with it. That's my opinion.
And I could come back to the board and check in. If you guys approve this and give me the go-ahead, I'll check in with the board after the competitive analysis phase. I'll bring the consultant back and we can have a more informed discussion with people who have expertise in this area and have done it for other people.
I think that's important.
Okay.
Yeah, the way I understood it, we're not locked into.
No, we're not locked into it. But we have to do this first step. That's what Tim is saying, and that's what Aaron's saying.
I think I'm perfectly comfortable.
I would be more comfortable if there is support for the first step of limiting the approval amount to $5,000, which is the cost of the first step, and then approving the additional steps as we go along, rather than the 30,000 all at once.
Okay, is that something that's, I don't know, I'll ask Jeff or Ed or whoever else might know, but can the board just say at this point we're approving the competitive analysis step 1 up to $5,500, and then we will approve future steps if we see necessary up to $30,000 as we go?
Yeah, that's interesting. And Jeff's going to address that in more detail later with what comes to the board, because technically, one could make the argument, I don't think this isn't a correct argument, I'll say off the bat, but you could make the argument that $5,500 is with my approval, so I could just do each step one at a time. That ends up being what's called a segmented purchase and would not be honest. So I'm bringing
one could also make this, Ed, one could also make this argument that this study was not approved in the budget process, and this study was not brought to the finance committee because it was not part of the budget process. So I disagree that you have the authority of proceeding with something that's not included in the budget, no matter what the amount.
Wow.
Well, again, that's something Jeff can address.
Go ahead, Bill.
I don't think, we really don't have a budget. We just have, items that we know that we're going to have structure for purchases or whatever. I mean, it was not brought up to the finance committee. That's true.
So this is Jeff. If I could suggest relative to this component of it, that I have no problem if the board wants to approve from a contract standpoint, if the board wants to approve $5,500 of the $30,000 study, and we want to spend a little time, Ed and I, making sure we're ratcheting down the competitive analysis piece. That presumes, however, that the vendor, Vantage Point, would want to engage in that study for $5,500. What they may be saying is, hey, listen, we want $30,000 for the whole thing. That would be the risk, but we can do it either way. We can have the whole thing approved with Ed having to come back and get the steps approved, or probably the easiest is to approve $5,500 and come back. But that presumes Vantage Point is amenable to that.
They may not be. They may, the 30,000 and the different steps, they're just assuming that, you know, they will end up making some profit on this if we go through all the steps and go up to the 30,000. But there again, you're going to have to go back to them and see what their thoughts are.
I think I confirmed with them, if I remember right, specifically that, hey, if we get to step one and we don't think this is go, we can pop out of this. I think they were okay with it.
That's right.
That's what I remember.
I know. Yeah, I remember that.
And also with their desktop competitive analysis, they're going to make a nice profit on the $5,500 is my belief.
Probably not. They're probably going to try to make it up on the rest, but there again, you know, it's
well, if Jeff's okay with capping this at 5,500 tonight with review of the analysis when it's done, I think that seems to be the most popular approach at this point.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I just was, you know, that would work for me. I was going to check in with y'all anyway. I just wanted to, I didn't want to just go for $5,500 and then go for money later, because I didn't want to appear as if I was doing a segmented purchase. So I wanted to give you the whole show here. So
Aaron, is that you can live with?
I'll be voting no, because I think that, let me put it this way. I'm pleased that we're not approving $30,000. I'm pleased that it has been confirmed that if we do the competitive analysis, that it will be brought back to the board before any decision is made to proceed any further. My competitive analysis it goes this way, is that I moved here in 2001 and there was Comcast in my neighborhood. Then 5 or 6 years ago, MetroNet put lines in my neighborhood that if you take Waterford, for example, we put fiber optic lines down to Waterford when we put our underground electric lines in, that whether or not MetroNet or Comcast is ready to proceed when we already have the lines in the ground, that they will enter that competitive environment. So I don't think the competition analysis is any more complicated than that. But if the majority of my fellow members differ than me, I can respect that. So that's my answer, Neil.
Okay, that's fair enough. All right. Anybody else have any questions for Ed or in general about the broadband feasibility study? And if not, Jeff, would we just amend this motion to not to exceed the 5,500, and that's all we need to change at this point?
That's correct, and I'm making a amendment to the contract to reflect the same.
Okay.
All right. So if there aren't any other questions, if someone wants to entertain a motion with a new amended amount, that would be fine.
I make a motion, we move to approve the broadband feasibility study from Vantage Point in the amount not to exceed $5,500.
Second.
Motion from Bill, and it sounded like a second from Tim to approve the broadband feasibility study in an amount not to exceed $5,500. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
No,
Okay, that motion carries with one no vote. And Jeff or Ed, if you'll just let the board know if they're okay with that first part, and then we'll just take it step by step if that's how it ends up going.
Okay.
I think
I'll
that's,
let you know.
I think that's the right approach.
All right, next item tonight is information item, and this is from our general manager, Ed Basquill, and it concerns what items actually come to the board.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, this is Jeff. I think I'm going to be leading this one off.
Okay.
And what I wanted to do, this is again an information item that I want to tee up for another day. But I thought, especially with a new board member and some of the discussions recently, what it is that sort of guides my philosophy as well as Ed's, and sort of what the tenets are that govern what the board's role is. And the whole premise here is that because we're using ratepayer money to buy and sell goods and services, we have, which is subject to regulation by Indiana Code, city ordinance, or our internal policies. Now, one of the things that that staff has learned in dealing with me on a number of these things, and those of you who are around for issues related to selling some of the electric department surplus, know that sometimes the process can become overly cumbersome and seemingly not efficient, and I would agree. But the first thing that we were just talking about is our budget and what it really means, and relative to other entities, a private entity or another municipal entity. It really, our budget acts as a guide. And the main thing that budgets do for us is allow for long-term, annual or beyond strategic planning. And they also serve as a backbone for assisting with determining future rate increases. And they are a check in the system for us to make sure that there is nothing, there are no mistakes being made, and that dollars are being accounted for. So when you think of that in conjunction with something like the city, where they have a budget after weeks of hearings, they approve a budget, and if something has been approved in a budget, that department is generally okayed to make that purchase. And really the way the city manages a lot of that, it spends a great deal of time working, managing line items within their budget. Well, statutorily, Lebanon Utilities is a different beast. And it is not required to put together a budget. Now, that's not something that I would ever suggest or that we would likely ever do, but Lebanon Utilities, as Sandra would tell you, is an enterprise fund. And that enterprise fund is more like a business with a governmental check in place. And we operate on signatory authority. And what that means is that different department heads, or at varying levels within the organization, have different signing limits, budgeted or not. Now, That means that that Jeff Greeno, for example, is the head of the electric department, can make a purchase, whether it's in his budget or not, up to $10,000. Now, at the end of the day, the budget issue is something that he has to answer for at year end relative to the board, but we're not required to go through and move line items around to approve purchases. Now, one of the things to remember is, budgeted or not, the board still goes through at the end, like you will be presented at the end of this meeting, and approve those claims. And the claims is another check in the process in approving that purchase or those funds that have been expended. So you will note on the shared screen, there's a table here with 4 columns. And Tim, I've sent that to you, Tim and Jim, I've sent that to you independently. It's not a big talking point here, but that table is a policy that picks up on public purchase law and some of our internal policy, and it's a guide to staff that direct us on how we walk through a purchase process.
Now, Jeff, this is Aaron. I can't see this on my computer screen.
Okay.
This meeting, would you please forward that to the board?
Of course.
Okay,
and Aaron, I think you have seen it, but it's that chart that talks about the varying purchase amounts, the required purchasing activity, and sort of our processes.
It was sent to me previously, and it looks different than that. I just would appreciate it also.
Yep, will do. And so really what that does is it sets out that whether or not a purchase that is above 15,000, which is layer 2 there, anything above 15,000, whether it's been budgeted or not, has to go to the board for approval. So there are some exceptions to that. One are emergencies. One is our power purchase, and the other is operational inventory. Now all those items, to some extent, still have to go through varying degrees of vetting in terms of the documentation process, but that changes the signatory authority. So when we're talking about operational items like wire, pipe, and meters, we've still got to go out and get quotes on those items, but the board has explicitly accepted those out and provided that signatory guidance to allow for a higher limit for those operational inventory type items. So and we also see in our chart in terms of our required documentation, we talk about having multiple quotes. We go through an RFP or RFQ process. Now, additionally, just understand that just because our policy sets a minimum of $50,000 doesn't mean it's not for the best interest of the utility to go through an RFQ or RFP process or even bids, or because that's what the industry standard is amongst the various vendors. So sometimes, like with the chemical bids, there's a little history behind that. You'll get that brought back to you, and because we've chosen to go through a bid process, and when a bid process has been initiated like that, it still requires board authority and approval. So there are really three tiers to determining what items come to the board. And as Ed and I have discussed this and sort of directed staff, visible items. When in doubt, bring it to the board and let's talk about it. If there has been an issue that was approved on an emergency basis.
I say, Jeff,
A water
Jeff-
main broke.
Jeff, this is Aaron. Would you please summarize those 3 tiers again?
I'm going through them now. Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So the first tier are visible items. Items that they perhaps are below a signing authority limit. They didn't need to go through a formal RFQ, RFP process. They're not accepted out, but for various reasons within the community, it's a issue that should be brought to the board's attention. And when I have been asked, when in doubt, throw it in front of the board and let's talk about it. The next tier are policy decisions, large overarching issues like the signatory authority delegation on the left side of the screen that sets out and for those that don't have it in front of them, it sets the varying cost ranges for the varying departments, and from $1,000 up to $15,000 at Ed's top end of his signing limit. So that would be an item that the board would decide on, in fact, did many years ago. And then the last area that goes to the board are those that are legally required. If we have items that are consistent with public purchase law, contracts that will be in excess of a certain dollar figure, bids that need to be approved, et cetera. So,
Jeff, real quick, Rick, on what you just said, Jeff, when you say in excess of a certain dollar figure, who determines the dollar figure?
The board has determined that dollar figure through the signatory authority delegation policy. So in other words, if Ed has a $10,000 item that's unbudgeted or budgeted, he can sign off on that, and he has the authority to enter into that agreement based upon this signatory authority delegation. Now that's why, Tim, it's important to understand the distinction between a purely municipal entity's budgeting process and an enterprise fund like Lebanon Utilities. So we have
that, correct?
Say again?
Does the board control the signatory levels?
Yes.
It's just what we share outside, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
Thank you.
Now, and that is something that is, I'm going to move into sort of what I think some recommendations that I have for the board to perhaps make working sessions and regular meetings perhaps more efficient. So number one of my recommendations is that we refine our working sessions. And Tim, you have come in on the back end of 2 new department heads coming in, and it has been invaluable experience for those department heads to use working sessions as a springboard to present information and work through with the board on various items and get their feet wet. I think in talking to Ed, our feeling is that, you know, we're going to pull that safety net out and we're going to be a little bit more restrictive in terms of what goes to a working session. And really a working session, in my way of thinking, is more of a roundtable type discussion where it allows for more of a free flow of information, obviously not in a virtual setting, but it's more of a discussion and crafting a policy and using everyone's backgrounds to come up with what is best fit for the utility. Or if we have a difficult item that is on the cusp of litigation, that's a time when we'll use a non-regular meeting that it's appropriate to sit down in that type of setting. So that's recommendation 1, is to refine our working sessions. 2, a recommendation that Ed and I've come up with is that we want to refine our board meeting presentations. And that ties into our budget comment. And that'll be for the board to decide on how much detail it really wants through its questions. If there's a capital improvement project that has been budgeted, does that make a difference to you versus an item that is unbudgeted capital improvement project?
Yeah, I'd like to interject here, Jeff. You know, I made a strong budget comment previously that you have shed more light on, but you know, I sort of refer back to my past business background where budgets were very important. They were a strong guide that managers managed to, and that were the subject of significant oversight by the appropriate company officials. So as a board member, to me, our budget is very important, and I just wanted to express that.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you, Aaron. And what I want to do is set the table and get you thinking about, gosh, is that something that we should consider? You know, Aaron, you also have to consider the source here. What I'm describing to you are what the legal ramifications are, not what's appropriate in a business setting. So if someone went completely off script and year end was 50% over on their budget, but had acted within their signatory authority, that's a disciplinary keep your job kind of issue. So what I want to continue to explore at a future date is sort of how we refine that, what the board's comfortable with, make sure everybody's on the same page, and how we handle, for example, refining our board meeting presentations, being in the budget and out of the budget kind of items. The third recommendation that you will see in the signatory authority delegation, the board in 2011 accepted out a number of items that did not need board approval, even though they would move above the signatory delegation. And for those not able to see, it accepts out operational inventories such as wire, meters, pipe, etc. So in other words, I'm going to pick on Ryan Ottinger. His signing authority is $10,000. Well, that would mean that exception would mean that he still needs to meet the documentation requirements, get it sufficient quotes, but he could, in theory, sign for and contract for $40,000 of pipe. Now, he still has to answer to the board and then the State Board of Accounts on that he has the required documentation, and he went through that process, but that has been specifically accepted out as an operational inventory. And I would imagine that that is a streamlining issue and an operational one for people like Ryan to make sure that they have enough inventory between board meetings, and that's a functional issue. Now, whether or not that's something that would be tweaked, it's my suggestion that the board look at that issue and potentially expand that or address it in some capacity, whether it's a budgeted or unbudgeted item, to include things like chemicals, to include things like utility poles. Let's be more specific about what it is that we're talking about in that signatory authority delegation. So that's an area that I would recommend to the board that we study a little bit further. I've taken the liberty in the red line that I sent to throw in a few examples. Software licenses, things like that. Should those be a normal course of business type item that can exceed the signatory authority? Now, that all springboards into my fourth recommendation, which is to consider changing the GM signing limits. Now, Ed and I have sort of gone round and round with this, and I think I will steal his thunder to tell you he doesn't want to do this and is happy with where his limit is. But perhaps what the board would consider doing is increasing the or refining the budgeted item refining limit or spending authority, and reducing his unbudgeted signing limit authority. So, you know, what that's doing is it's putting more credence towards our budget, which is a guide and a very important one, but again, not one that's statutorily required and not one that we have to follow by line item moving forward in our operations. So at some point in the future, that's sort of a precursor to set the table for 4 recommendations that I think Ed, and I also want to mention Sandra, I think would join in some of these that we can perhaps do to refine our operations, become a little bit more efficient in how we present things and how we bring things to the board for consideration.
Hey, Jeff, I think you did a great job, but if it's okay, if I can add a few things. Yeah, Jeff really did steal my thunder, and I guess Aaron Smith did earlier, because when we talked about the $30,000 on broadband, and Aaron made the comment that it wasn't in the budget, so the whole thing should be going in regardless of the amount. By the way, the delegation authority is now, I didn't have to, but I really would want to anyway. I'm going to bring anything unbudgeted just for that reason. I'm kind of in line with doing the budget meaning something the way Aaron and I think Tim Hudson and I talked offline a little bit. So I like the idea of us having a lot more scrutiny on items that aren't budgeted, and maybe noting on the agenda whether it's budgeted or not budgeted, because that's a question that's always asked, and it's something we should point out to people. So in operational inventory, last meeting we talked a lot about chemicals. Well, and one of the things I think Neil made an excellent comment. He said, well, whatever, we're going to use the chemicals, we're going to put chlorine in the water even if it goes over budget. So why are we even looking at this amount? And that makes it look like operational inventory, because we're going to use more chemicals when we pump more water. We're going to use less chemicals when we pump less water. And it's just like software licenses or wire, things of that nature. So I think this is a pretty good analysis from Jeff's standpoint, but and the working session, I guess one thing I could add on that is that the working sessions are off camera and the main ones are in the main session. So that means when we present something, it's not just practice for us, but one thing I've seen other places, I don't know about here, is lots of times people don't want to ask a question where it's on camera because they don't want to look like they're not knowledgeable in a certain area. And also they might want to drill down more and then ask that same question again on camera, just because they want to make sure that their public constituency hears them say a certain thing. So other places I've been, that's been the structure, and I probably have leaned towards doing more working sessions than are absolutely necessary. But that's board discretion, whatever you guys want to do. I just think it's good we air out that issue.
Now, this is Aaron. I'd like to emphasize how valuable to me the board packet is. That the detail in the board packet helps me a great deal to prepare for both working sessions and board meetings. So I just wanted to emphasize that for Aaron Smith purposes, more is better in the board packet.
No, we're not changing that. Not looking to change that at all.
Okay.
Well, yeah, but I agree with Aaron, because the detail is great, especially as a rookie. You get to learn pretty quickly how processes begin to work, and then I can structure questions after that. But I'm also one that says I like the detail, but I'm not sure the items that have come to the board, as per Neil's kind of pushback previously, are the ones the board should be looking at. And that's what this discussion is about, and I appreciate Jeff bringing that forward. I think there's some work to do around how to set these things. And the only thing I would say is, based on Jeff's recommendations, I'd like to see some data that says how often does Ryan need to approve something? How often does Ed need to approve something? And what is that level? Do we need to authorize a $30,000 level or a $50,000 level or a $6,000 level? I really don't know, but the data should tell us how the business works and what the right authority levels are versus just saying, hey, how about 15,000 or 20 or 10 or whatever it may be.
I think that's an excellent point, and I don't know exactly how many purchases are approved at each level, and I don't know if our software captures that. Sandra, do you have any insight on that? Or
Yeah, we should be able to get can you hear me? Sorry.
yes, can hear you.
Okay. We should be able to just go through the check registers and come up with a pretty good idea of those numbers.
That's a great point. Well, we're here to serve. We'll do whatever rules the board wants to set. It's just, I appreciate Jeff airing out that issue, and
Yeah, I think this is a good agenda item, and I appreciate everybody's input on it because it's important and it's something that we can work on going forward and tweak it so it works good for everybody, the board and for staff. So
Yeah, I kind of go along with what Tim's saying, that, if it's data driven, that would give us an idea what kind of level we need to go to.
yeah, and I know probably a good time to just sort of mention a shout out for Danielle being on board as my admin assistant. She used to work for us in customer service. A lot of you know her, and she's been back a week and doing a great job. But one thing we're working on is coming up with sort of a database of board meeting items as they come in. I previewed at a prior working session a form we were going to use that makes a database automatically from it. Going forward, we should be able to see what comes to the board, how often. Ryan Ottinger often jokes about how often he presents. Well, I can get the actual data and the numbers, and we can do a more detailed analysis on it. Right now, to do that, we'd have to go through the old agendas, tabulate them, do a bunch of research, and it'd probably be more effective just to study this going forward, is my feeling.
I agree.
yeah, I apologize. I didn't do an official welcome to Danielle, but I can tell you, I've mentioned before, when people know that you're on the utility board and you're out in public, they give a lot of kudos to people they might know who do a great job. And I can say that I'm glad she's back because I would get a lot of, man, that Danielle knows a lot of stuff when I go in the office. So I'm glad she's back. So.
Thank you.
I second that.
Welcome back, man.
Does anybody else
The meeting you in
have
person.
anything? Anybody else have anything for the item 4 here before we
I
move
think
on?
this is I meant to talk about, I know that we have COVID and some places are starting to meet back in person, some aren't. Again, we'll do what the board wants. We were just looking for herd immunity, but if you guys wanted to talk about that too, we can. It fits under the item, I believe.
I'm ready to go back to in-person meetings immediately. That's my vote.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody has an issue with that, obviously bring it up. I mean, I think we're moving in the right direction and the data shows that we're moving in the right direction as far as COVID goes. I mean, we could set April as a tentative back. We could go as soon as next meeting. I think we still think it makes sense to still require masks if we're going to meet in person for a while longer. But did you and Jeff already discuss possibly April being the time we jump back in, or what's the consensus there?
I tentatively picked April because the data is always changing, and that's what IMPA had decided, and they're having their April. And they do a lot of research and give us these presentations. I occasionally pass on to board members, but things look like they're doing a lot better. They just lowered the COVID vaccination age to 55. Was it, Jeff? I can't remember what you said.
50.
50.
50 starting Friday.
Yeah.
And vaccines becoming more available. It's really a judgment call at this point. There's a lot of places meeting back in person, a lot of places meeting virtually. I'll work at the pleasure of the board and whatever you guys want to do. I know that it is difficult doing Zoom meetings. We'd all rather be together, but
I'd go along. This is Bill. I go along with April, and we'll go ahead and wear a mask for a while And that's my input.
Hey, do we normally have 3 meetings in a month like March where it's basically every second Wednesday? So we would meet the 17th and the 31st, is that right?
No,
It's not-
there's only 2 meetings per month, regardless of how many Wednesdays there are.
Okay, so our next meeting would be the 17th, and then we would jump basically to the 7th of April.
I believe so, but I think Jeff Jacob was raising the
Yeah.
issue of that there's a spring break that that you guys might want to miss where it comes up. I'm not sure. I don't have it in front of me right now.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
If we do that, instead of going to the 7th, we could make it the 14th and the 28th. That would miss spring break, right?
yeah, I don't know when everybody else's spring break is. Lebanon is actually the last week in March.
Right.
So we go either way, but I think we'd be fine. Being just planning to go back in person with masks in our first April meeting, if everybody's like that.
Okay. This is Jeff. So what I'm hearing is the 17th will be virtual again, and then
No,
whatever the
I thought we were going to wait till April.
yeah no it will be
Virtual.
March
17th
17th will be virtual, and then the first meeting in April we will resume in person. Is that correct?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah, which is
For what it's worth,
7th.
I will not be available April 7th for that meeting. I will certainly make someone available for my office to cover, or if you were inclined to change that, that's totally up to you guys.
Well, since there's still 2, I mean, we could go the 14th and 28th of April. I mean, as long as we have 2 meetings
That
scheduled.
sounds better to me.
Okay, everybody okay with that if we tweak the April meetings by a couple of weeks?
I think it's probably better. We're going to get more public participation when people. I know we don't get a lot of public participation, but there's more of an opportunity for it, and I'm sure it's easier on everyone not trying to fit it in over a spring break. Of
Yeah.
course, I'm always available whenever you guys are.
All right, well, let's
Yeah.
tentatively plan for the 14th and 28th to be our April meetings.
Okay.
Our next meeting will be the 17th of March virtually, and then April 7th or 14th, sorry, will be the first in-person meeting.
Okay.
And Danielle can note that for me and keep me straight. I appreciate it. So glad she's back. But before we conclude the item, I just follow up on the broadband. While we were speaking, I texted back and forth with the guy from Vantage Point, and they're totally fine with just doing the first stage for $5,500. It's not like they backloaded a bunch of profit and won't do it.
All right.
So we'll look at it. So
That's good. All right, good stuff. Anything else on item 4 before we move on to Ryan with hydrant flush information? All right, thanks everybody for that. We'll jump to you, Ryan.
This is an informational item for the board and for the public also. Every spring we do a hydrant flush throughout town. Our water treatment plant does. That improves our drinking water, and it also makes sure that we properly operate the majority of our hydrants. And if there's any, we can flag them. Put that into our work order system and get those fixed and repaired and get them back on for the fire department for fire safety. This year we're planning on starting, weather permitting, obviously, the week of April 5th. And you can see a map on the screen. And those are approximate dates. You know, if we start on the 5th and we have torrential downpour or below average temperatures, below freezing temperatures, that will need to be tweaked. What we do is we keep this updated on the utilities website, and we keep it updated on social media. We also do let the traditional media know, that reporter, radio mom, when the start date is and the approximate finish date, but we have real-time updates on our social media when we're going to be out and about and where we're going to be, so we can, traffic can be avoided. We also obviously let Boone County Dispatch know, so if people drive by and see a hydrant wide open, that they know that if we're in that area, dispatch knows that wasn't something that's been ran over, gotten hit by someone or something to that effect. So this is, like I said, just an informational item. And if the board has any questions on the process or, the testing we do or anything like that, I'd be happy to answer any questions at this point.
All right, thank you, Ryan. I know the flushing always goes pretty smooth, so that's more information for the public. So like you said, they know what's going on. Anybody have any questions for Ryan on the hydrant flush? All right. If not, we'll stay with Ryan. We're going to talk the eco infrastructure solutions.
Yes, we had an emergency tank clean out at the Chicago Street water plant. For anybody that's been by that facility, we have a round brick. It's about 35-foot deep, 15-foot diameter backwash holding tank. So when we backwash our filters and clean our filters, the water is held in the tank to allow the iron and any debris to settle out. The waste water is sent to the wastewater plant since it's in town, and the debris is collected in the tank. I started in 1999, and that tank had not been cleaned out since I've started. It was on the radar to be cleaned out, but it hadn't affected any efficiency yet. Unfortunately, connected to that building, and literally if you walk in where the well number 3, Chicago Street well field number 3 well is, that building is actually curved because the building was attached to the tank. In doing just a daily inspection, we saw water coming in when we backwashed. We saw water leaking in from the backwash side into the well side, which contains electric outlets, electric panels, and it's just not a place that you want to have water leaking in and standing water. Well, in order to determine where that leak was and repair it, we had to get into that tank and we had to clean that tank out because the debris was higher than the leak, unfortunately. And so we also only had about a 3 to 4 day working day window because we backwash on Mondays and we backwash on Thursday. We can sometimes push it to Friday based on the condition of the filters, but that's really the window we had to get that repair done. If not, every time we filled that tank back up, it was going to continue to leak, and you ran the potential with freezing thaw for that leak to get bigger. So I called Eco Infrastructure. They do our Sugar Creek backwash tank clean out, and they've done a great job. They did it under budget and in faster schedule than anticipated the last couple of years, and they are a very trusted partner. They're out of Whitetown, so I was able to scramble their trucks. And the next morning, after making the phone call, they knew the time situation, so they had 3 vac trucks on hand, and they already had the permitting, emergency permitting done, so they were able to not only vac it out, but they were able to take it to an appropriate landfill based on the emergency testing. So what you see is the results of that. It was not a budgeted item. Fortunately, our Sugar Creek backwash tank cleanout was a budget, or is a budgeted item, and it is budgeted for $100,000. And based on the estimates that we have to clean that out, that's going to be well under the $50,000 range. you just don't know when I budget, you just don't know until you get down there and physically take the measurements of that tank. Chicago Street, we could not physically take those measurements because there's no access ladder down to that. They literally had to put guys in straps and kind of lower them in. We assumed that debris was about 3 feet deep, and it ended up being in spots almost 6, 7 foot deep. There's actually a mixer at the bottom of that tank that I had never seen before since November of '99. So it is completely cleaned out. And what my plan is with this being cleaned out is a temporary patch was made to repair that, to keep it from leaking in. But there are options to line that tank and to improve the integrity of that. And instead of building a new tank, that I'm going to explore for next year's budget season. And so, because the integrity of the rest of that tank looks to be in pretty good shape based on while they were down there, the inspection. But so we will be under budget at the Sugar Creek plant. But this was not a budget item, but fortunately I think it's going to, even with the cost of this, it'll still keep us under the budgeted amount that I had for the backwash, Sugar Creek backwash. So this is just an informational item because, after speaking to Sandra about this, we kind of felt like, and this kind of circles us back to the board information that Jeff had presented about emergency services. And, I did use my best judgment to deem this as emergency services instead of getting quotes and going through that process and board approval. The time frame just did not warrant that with that, the potential of that leak getting worse and it being electrical and being one of our wells that we don't want standing water in. So I can answer any questions that I may not have covered in this. If anybody has any questions on this invoice.
Well, the good news is, Ryan, it sounds like you said, this will still be in under what we had planned for the clean outs. And secondly, you have a pretty good background with this Eco Infrastructure Solutions company and knew they would do a good job. So,
Ryan, the only thing I would suggest is this become a line item on a budget periodically to clean it out, period.
Tim, that's I couldn't agree more. And that's what we ended up doing at Sugar Creek instead of guessing every 5 or 7 years how much is in there, that we just now that it's empty, we can monitor it and maybe do an every other year to where it's not a $20,000 impact. We could do a $10,000 line item as we learn about how much iron settles into that. So I couldn't agree more. And that's something that we can, what we'll do in the future is bid or get quotes for the Sugar Creek and Chicago Street. We'll have them on the same year and get quotes for both of them. So that might save us some money on mobilization and demobilization cost if we can get a kind of a package deal on that.
all right, thanks, Ryan. Anybody else have any questions for Ryan on this item? It's informational item. All right, we will jump to the mower purchase, Ryan, that you have up next, and this is an action item.
Yes, sir. This is a front deck mower request for the wastewater treatment plant. This was budgeted last year, actually, and scheduled to be replaced. But when COVID hit, we kind of looked at the budget and thought, tried to find some items that we necessarily could push to 2021 just because we weren't sure where our budget was going, where our rates, how the ratepayers were going to be able to handle the pandemic. So we did push this back. The reason we are requesting a front deck mower as opposed to your traditional zero turn is anyone that's been out to the wastewater treatment plant, there are some very steep grades on some of the tanks and some of the hills that we have out there. And these front deck mowers offer a little bit more stability and safety protocols and mow a little bit better on those steep grades than a traditional zero turn. We did get 3 quotes. The lowest quote was from Booth out of Crawfordsville, and that is the Kubota, and it is $24,955. I did budget $20,000 for this, and in the next step of my process, we do have a trade-in that I will ask on the next agenda item for the board to approve the trade-in, which and Sandra might be able to, well, there's no might. Sandra will be able to explain this a little bit better. So on the books, it will appear cash-wise that we are over. But once we get the trade-in, we will actually be under the budgeted 20,000 that I have. Sandra, did I explain that correctly?
Yeah, we need to capitalize the asset for the true value. So what we normally do on those is we'll have to delete the old asset. We'll show either, a gain or loss on that asset, whatever it is, but then we put the value of the tractor, the total value of the 24,490 or 955 is what we want to put on the books to depreciate. I don't think I said that very well.
We get it.
But, so this is Aaron, but the cash out of hand will be, after trade-in, will be $15,918, right?
That should be correct. You got $7,000 trade. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yes, sir. After trade-in, we will be out of yes, cash out of hand will be $15,918.81.
Right.
Yes, sir. And that's
Yeah.
after trade-in and after some cash incentives that they offer, through a dealership, just like you would when you buy a car or anything else.
Right. Right.
Yeah, when you look at our financials that we put out, when we compare budget to actual, that amount will actually show as the full amount. And that's what Ryan was trying to say. So it's going to look like it went over, but cash wise, it will not go over.
All right. Any other questions for Ryan on this mower? Sounds like it looks like the old mower was about 10 years old, so we're still getting some value for it.
Sure.
Yeah,
And
that's to my crew.
the trade, it does come under your budget. So.
Yeah, and I will tell you, they did a great job of being very understanding about having to push this off, and they do a great job of taking care of. And I think with the backhoe a few meetings back, and now this, you can see that even with wear and tear, my crews do a real good job of maintaining the equipment, so we can get a good trade in and get our money's worth out of it.
Good.
All right. Any other questions for Ryan? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the purchase of the new Kubota front deck mower from Booth Machinery for the wastewater treatment plant in the amount not to exceed $24,954.69.
This is Aaron, I second.
Motion by Bill, seconded by Aaron to approve the purchase of the new Kubota deck mower from Booth Machinery for the wastewater treatment plant in an amount not to exceed $24,954.69. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, and then we'll jump to the next step that you mentioned, Ryan, which is declaring this old mower as surplus.
And I think we kind of went through it. So I will take any questions on that. But I think that this is just kind of the process. Sandra was a great help in walking me through this process. So I would just I would suggest that we approve we did get trade-in amounts from all three quotes, and this comes out to, after everything's said and done, their total price and the trade-in to be the lowest bid. So I would suggest that the board declare this surplus.
All right, if there's questions on the surplus, we'll entertain a motion for that.
I move to approve the request to declare the wastewater treatment plant 2012 front deck Kubota F3080 riding mower as surplus.
This is Aaron, I second.
Motion by Bill, and I had Aaron as the second to approve the request to declare the 2012 Kubota riding mower as surplus. Any other questions on the mower? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I'm going to kill my video here just because I'm getting a little choppiness to see if that helps. But we will jump to Jeff Greeno, our electric manager, for the next item, which is an action item. And it looks like it is the VIM RFP award recommendation.
Yes, that is correct. Just to give you a quick brief background of this, our current contract with our vendor inventory managed services expires in April. So Lebanon Utilities worked with BF&S and we sent out requests for proposals and we received 2 replies back from 2 vendors. On Friday, February 26th, we had a virtual meeting with the vendors, Lebanon Utilities, BF&S, and our legal counsel, and we opened up those proposals. We then set up a scoring committee consisting of Ed, myself, and Josh McKay. We reviewed these proposals over the weekend individually using a scoring sheet to determine which company would be best for Lebanon Utilities. Monday, we had a meeting. We compared our answers and came up with a decision. So with all that said, we recommend that the Lebanon Utility Service Board award the vendor inventory management contract to Annixter, subject to legal review and finalization of the contract, authorizing General Manager Ed Baskell to sign all necessary documents.
See, I have a question for Jeff Jacob. Are you there, Jeff Jacob? Jeff Jacob?
Yes, sir.
What will be the length of the contract?
Say one more time.
What will be the length of the contract? How many years?
I believe that this would be a 3-year contract consistent with the RFP request.
Thank you.
What do we anticipate the value of the contract being?
This is Ed. Let me jump in here because I something I was wanting to add anyway, and that plays into it. I made a slide here, and because the value of the contract is part of what helped us decide to go with Annixter. Because when we did the RFP, we did an RFP with an added alternative to have them provide staff that they pay on site. And that's what we do currently. But we did it just providing the service where we would have to hire someone, or doing it with an alternative where they hire a person. So the way it came out, I made a spreadsheet, Tim, that you probably can't see, but it's in Board Booklet, where the value supplied is we're expecting probably between $300,000 and $400,000 a year. And which bid and which delivery method is lowest, I have highlighted in yellow, and that's going to be determined by how much the value of the contract is per year. And Annixter is the best, with an Annixter employee, is the cheapest value up to about $500,000. And I've made a graph that included what our spend was. And to describe the graph, it's, if you go 2013 through 2017, it's all under $400,000 and gradually increasing. 2018, it goes up to $900,000, which is consistent with the 69 kV project where we supplied material. And then it comes back down. 2019 is a little high too, as well, also because the lagging costs from the 69 kV, I'm pretty sure. So we did a very detailed analysis, and it looks like basically because the employee loading and the employee cost for this privatized employee is cheaper than a Lebanon Utilities employee. And it's what we're doing right now. It looks like Annixter with an employee, which is what we're doing right now, came out to be the cheapest option. So, Tim, that's probably a more detailed answer to the question than you asked, but I'm hoping did I answer your question?
No, actually it's not, Ed, because in the contract documents, the other power line supply comes in with much lower margins on materials, and at $400,000 or $500,000, that gets to be pretty significant, even though their cost per hour of a person is different. And is that what you're showing on this document? Are you showing both equipment and people?
Yes, exactly. What I did is I calculated the loading rate for the employee and added that in and made a spreadsheet, because I was in a quandary. I had the same take on it as you did. I looked at power line and it was a lot lower percentage wise. Also, they put theirs in as, I believe, as margin instead of markups. We had to convert that. So we added in what their employee loading was, and I just made a chart comparing them based off of the dollars per year supplied. And as you might expect, even though their employee is more expensive, but their margin was lower. So the more materials we supplied, the better power line looks. So that's essentially what I did on this document.
So what's the crossing point? Where do they intersect? At what dollar value? Do you have that?
I have Annixter being the cheapest at up to $500,000, and power line is let me see, it's on the chart here. I'll pick it off the chart. Power line without an employee becomes the cheapest at $500,000, and then power line with an employee becomes cheapest at, I didn't mark that out, at $900,000.
Thank you, and sorry, apologies to the rest of you because I can't see the document.
No, excellent questions, and I probably should have got this out sooner. We just we were in a kind of a hurry getting this done. We want to make sure we did it right, and I didn't get this put into board booklet until earlier today. So my apologies.
Tim, you should also have screenshots of those sent to you in your email.
Let's see, Ed, I'd like to ask a question, please. See if I can better understand it. So did you take a bucket of normally purchased items and did your computation, or?
No, I took 100, like as an example, $100,000 a year, and then the Annixter's rate was 17%. So I took $100,000 a year times 17% and came up with that number. And then I added in the $26 a year for their employee and came up with their number. I did an example calculation for the team. I could send that on to you on email.
That's good. Thank you. I understand now. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Ed or Jeff Greeno on this item? If not, we'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the award of the vendor inventory management contract to Annixter, subject to legal review and finalization of the contract, and authorizing General Manager Ed Biscloud to sign all necessary documents.
Second.
Got a motion by Jim and a second by Bill to approve the award for the vendor inventory management contract to Annixter, subject to legal review and finalization of the contract with our general manager to sign the necessary documents. Any other questions on this item? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you, guys. Next item is action item, and it's approval of the claims. Everyone had a chance to review the claims, and if so, any questions? Entertain a motion for the claims.
I make a motion, we approve the claims and payroll transfers dated March the 3rd, 2021 in the amount of $828,230.41 for the claims and payroll $6,392,713.94 for transfers.
Second.
Motion by Bill, seconded by Aaron to approve the claims dated March 3rd, 2021. Any other questions on the claims? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, claims pass. And the next item is other business that may come before the board. Who has other business they'd like to start with?
I got one thing. I just want to tell the board, I usually go to the Board of Works meetings and the city council meetings, and our water and wastewater department got a big shout out for helping out the Parks Department with snow removal. And kudos to Ryan and team, just being team players with the city. So we like seeing that because we're all in this together. So thanks, Ryan.
Neighbors helping neighbors.
Good stuff.
Neil, I also had, we had a customer come in recently to personally thank Chad Charles of our water distribution department for some customer service he provided when he was called out after hours. And so I just wanted to thank Chad, and recognize him. I've got a great crews here and they make my job pretty easy, but when a customer, takes time out of their day to come in and thank somebody for their after hours service, that really means a lot. So kudos to Chad Charles and our water distribution department for an on-call response that he gave a customer and the customer service he gave.
Now, this is Aaron, and I always take this opportunity to, when these kinds of kudos come up, to point out that we are a municipal utility, neighbors serving neighbors. It's a very valuable, and I just taking this opportunity to say that again. Thank you.
All right, thanks Ryan and Ed and Aaron for that. Not surprised to hear that actually, and it's always good to hear it. So anybody else have any other business for the board?
I just have a quick update. I think Ed wanted me to do this update today, I hope, and not next time. But on the, we had the customer that had come to the board meeting last week and requested the ACH information. So we did go ahead and reach out to our online bill pay, and they have put us in contact with the department that actually does the online bill interface. So I have signed an agreement for that, and there's no cost to implement it. It is 10 cents per transaction, which is very minimal. So we hope to have that implemented within the next 30 days. I'm not sure how fast it'll run on their side, but we did want to give you an update on that.
Awesome, thanks Sandra. That's a quick response. I know we talked briefly about ACH and how it's been around forever and it's fast and secure, and I think it's a really good step actually, and will make customer service job a lot easier than processing paper checks. I think you'll be surprised how many people will take advantage of that, even if it's not by their own choice, by paying their utility bill through online banking or taking advantage of the ACH. So thanks for that update.
Okay, that is really good to hear. Sandra, how do we publicize that to our customer base?
So we have several different social media options, and we'll make sure that goes out on Instagram, Facebook. There's one other, I think we tweet. You have to forgive me because I don't do those particularly. I'm more like a Facebook person. But the other thing we can do is we can come up with a brochure and we can do an insert with the customer bills once we're ready to do that.
Yeah, I think we need to do it as broadly as possible because I think our customer base, at least those folks who write the checks and pay the bills, they may not be in tune with, completely in tune with
Right.
Instagram or Twitter, Facebook maybe.
Yeah, I agree with that. So we will come up with something that'll go out with the bills.
Thank you.
Yeah, Sandra, would you or Ed reach back out to Chad Kiker and give him an update if you haven't already?
Yes. So we can give him an update. The one thing I was waiting for was for them to contact us back. I did go ahead and sign the agreement since it was no cost to us, but we have not heard back yet. So as soon as we do, we will reach back out with him and let him know when it'll be available.
Awesome. I think he'll be happy, and especially with the speed that we handled this. So thank you, everybody who worked.
So I have one question. Sandra, you said there's no cost to us, but earlier you mentioned 10 cents per transaction.
So yeah, there's no cost to implement it. But then every transaction that comes through does cost 10 cents, which is cheaper than what a normal credit card transaction would be.
Okay,
Yeah.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay. And I will let everyone know, just from the standpoint of, we had to step out of our credit card vendor earlier in the year. And right now our credit card fees are half what they were before.
Oh, that's great news.
Yep.
And
All right.
Sandra, just to remind the board, that was all part of the decision that was tied to stepping out of our sort of long-term management agreement. And Sandra, the name of that company is escaping me.
Paymentus.
So that is paying dividends and a very good decision by the board and recommendation from staff.
Yeah, and thanks to our customer service manager, she's the one who's taken the ball on this and running with the support team. So
It's Janice. Yeah.
All right. Good stuff. Anybody else have any other business?
Not business, just a thank you to Jeff for sending me information along the way of this meeting.
All right, Ed, how about public comment? We have any emails, comments, YouTubes, phone calls pertaining to our meeting tonight?
No, sir, I don't have any public comment this time.
All right, with that, it looks like our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, March 17th, 2021 at 5 p.m. That will be hopefully our last virtual meeting for a very long time. So look forward to that. Anybody else have anything for the board before we adjourn? All right. Thank you, Danielle. Welcome back to the utilities. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn if we have one.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Tim, seconded by Aaron to adjourn tonight. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening, and we will see you